All right. Welcome to Connected Learning. We are on live stream now. I'm getting I'm getting some echo here. Maybe there's a way for me to shut that off. Okay. Sorry about that. This is Howard Reingold, and I'm going to welcome us to this. This is the second in the what we hope to be an ongoing series in a growing community around connected learning, and you can learn more about who is going to be on next week and the week after, and see recordings of previous weeks by going to connectedlearning.tv. Today, our guest is going to be Buffy Hamilton, the Unquiet Librarian, and she is trying to get online right now. She's a working school librarian. She has to go from class to class and find a way in her school to get online. So while we're waiting for Buffy, we have a great opportunity here. We have a high school class who are pretty interesting, and I think we're going to talk with them while we're waiting for our Unquiet librarian. Those of you who are in the live stream, you can enter questions into the chat there, as well as chatting with each other about the subject, and we will try to monitor that and bring your questions forward for the class or for Buffy when she gets online. We have kind of a fishbowl method here. We have a group of respondents in the Google Hangout, and I'm going to ask our respondents to introduce themselves, starting with Allison.
Okay, thanks, Howard. My name is Alison Hicks, and I'm the Romance Language Librarian at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Obviously, you can tell from my accent I'm from the UK, but I do a lot of work with French and Spanish here in Colorado. Just started working, I sort of met Buffy last year, and I'm doing a lot with a French journalism class. So I'm just sort of a new person working on participatory learning, connected learning, but I'm really looking forward to trying to expand that, working more with personal learning environments in the future.
Colm? You need to turn your microphone on?
Hello.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Colm Lennon. I'm a public librarian for Edinburgh City. I work in a public library context, and I'm interested in how libraries can be used as settings for participatory and connected learning for the future. And that's me.
All right. So our sudden temporary guest speakers are David Preston's class. Would you like to introduce yourselves and tell people where you are and what you're doing?
I'm Isaac. This is John, and everywhere there's the rest of the class in here, and Dr. Preston's in the back, and we learn through technology.
Great. Well, we're going to ask you about that. Heather? Heather, turn your mic on.
Hi, my name is Heather Hurdy. I have been a school. Oh, it's on. Am I not coming through?
No, you're okay now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm good? Okay. There must be a little lag. I am a high school librarian. I've been a high school librarian for about 8 years. Most recently have moved to Seattle, but I was originally from New Jersey and have worked in with mostly high school students and interested in connected learning and inquiry.
I wouldn't even think of checking Facebook. I wouldn't even think of having anything on because it's such a demanding task already. So why handicap yourself by having other things like music or TV or whatever distracting you when you're already kind of pushed your own limits?
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're saying that you really develop your own sense of when it's appropriate to multitask and when it isn't, according to what it is that you're trying to absorb.
Pretty much, because the whole thing with high school students is that if we're dealing with a hard subject, and the more we spend on it, the less sleep we're getting, which for AP students that's more valuable than gold in some cases. So we kind of learn, okay, this is how we do this. We do this setting through this most efficient method so that we can use that other time, like that wasted time spent doing that one particular subject, on other things that will eventually, hopefully, allow us to be better rested and better prepared for the next day, and we just won't completely burn ourselves out by the end of the week or by the end of the school year, what have you.
Well, I know that some of our other respondents have questions to ask you, but maybe I should take a second here to explain to the students who have just entered the class what we're talking about here. There are, besides the people that you can see on Google Hangout here who are librarians and educators from around the world, there are a lot of other people, maybe a couple of hundred other people watching us through live stream and chatting with each other, and sometimes they will relay questions. So many of the questions I'm asking you are relayed from them, and we're particularly interested here in what we call connected learning, which is connecting kind of the interest-based activities that you do because they're fun, like role-playing games or other kinds of games, and peer learning, in which you teach each other how to do things like role-playing games or how to make a video or do an animation, and what you're expected to learn. Oh, here's our guest. Hi, Buffy. Welcome.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you well. Let me give a brief introduction and then let you take off on it.
Okay,
So
thank you.
this is Buffy J. Hamilton, the Unquiet librarian. I interviewed her. I'll put the link into the chat in a few minutes because I was really interested in the way she worked with a classroom teacher in at Creekside High in Canton, Georgia, about doing a project on veterans issues, U.S. war veterans. Instead of writing a paper, she had them create a multimedia resource that included news feeds, archival video, student interviews with veterans, and they documented how they accomplished it and then shared their findings with the world. How much more interesting is that than writing a paper than only your teacher sees? I mean, that's my opinion of it. So I'm going to let, we've had some time go by. I'm going to let Buffy take it away and give us a little introduction to who you are and what you do and what excites you. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I apologize for the technical difficulties. My netbook crashed and kicked me out of the room twice. And I'm actually coming to you live from the heart of the library. I'm actually at my circ desk right now, so please forgive if you hear some activity. We have 2 classes coming in, but this is the only workstation that I can get connected on. So, like I said, coming from ground zero. For those of you that don't know me, I am a high school librarian. This is my, I guess, almost seventh year as a school librarian, and my 20th year in public education. So as we transition class periods, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get my screen sharing set up, and I just want to kind of give you my spin on what participatory culture looks like in a library, and then I'd love for us just to continue the conversations that you all have already started. So let me see if I can get into screen sharing here.
Okay, we're seeing it.
Okay, and are you able to see the screens fully now, or the slides fully?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I really like to think of libraries as a place of community and where everybody who comes into the library can be part of the construction or composition of the story of library. So for me, the lens of participatory learning and participatory culture has really framed my practice context to make your decisions, all your aspects of programming. So this has been a powerful model for me, and I think it is for libraries in general, whether you're academic, special, public, K-12 school, because the framework really is so scalable and so flexible to help you adapt to the needs of your learning community. So I think if you sort of subscribe to this philosophy of learning and librarianship, then you might see libraries as sort of like a commonplace text, where every person is kind of sticking in their little bit, their little contribution to this larger text or this larger narrative that we call library. And to me, it's very exciting to think about how in my location, the students and the teachers are helping us to write that story. Maybe I'm like the editor as the librarian, but it's really our students and teachers that, you know, are the heart of that narrative or that story of librarianship. And for me, you know, sometimes we think about libraries and we think about them as like books or computers, but to me, library really is the shared story of the human experience. Everything really does come back to what that human contribution is. And I think the person who really has influenced my thinking as far as looking at participatory sites of culture is Dr. Henry Jenkins. I know most of you are probably familiar with him. And a few years ago, I read a white paper that he helped craft, and it goes back, I think, to today's essential question: library and librarians as the vehicles for disrupting, you know, this banking system of education, and really giving people a sense of empowerment and giving them that access to participation where they ultimately become more independent learners, and they have that agency to take charge of their learning and ultimately on a bigger scale, you know, of their lives. And that sounds maybe a little melodramatic, but it's really, I think, fascinating to see, you know, the things that we try to do to support students that give them confidence and help them to maybe visualize, reconceptualize themselves and what the possibilities for them for their lives might be. Ultimately, I see my role as helping students to learn how to craft their own narratives, both in a literal sense, maybe with a digital composition, but in a more metaphorical or a more abstract sense, you know, writing and taking charge of what the story of their lives are going to be. And I think it's very exciting that as a librarian that I can have, you know, a hand in shaping that in some way. So thinking about disrupting that banking system and crafting or positioning the library as a site of participation, really I think our role is to support conversations for learning and to make these conversations dialogic where we have lots of voices and multiple means of communicating, transliterate ways, if you will, of communicating, creating content, sharing it, and really creating conversations around the things that students either come caring about or may discover that they care about as learners. So in the library, we try to strive to create an environment that's open and transparent, that's social, which now it's abnormally quiet because they're working on their note cards. It's inquiry driven. I love to use Barbara Stripling's model of inquiry to frame the kinds of experiences that we're creating for our students here. Learner driven and providing choices. And that's something that I've worked really hard on the last year with my teachers, as well as our students, to take their feedback and to really listen to that, to open up more choices that we're offering through, you know, the instructional design for these collaborative learning experiences. And I think it's too thinking about a culture that practices the new media literacy's 4 C's of participation, where again the emphasis is moving from not from consumption to creation, where we're helping our students to learn how to circulate themselves, to reach out to a larger world, maybe through Skype or through their blogs or through RSS feeds, and connecting with others who could help them grow or inform their understandings. It's moving from the solitary in the silo learner to one that's collaborative and social. And finally, it's creating connections. How do we help students to think critically in pursuing their questions and their passions, their interests, to connect the dots, to think more critically? So when we think about growing this participatory culture and establishing relationships, I think it's helpful to go back to something that Dr. Michael Wesch just wrote recently in the Chronicle of Higher Ed. And it goes back to, I think, where we started a few minutes ago, is that at the heart of learning in any learning space, whether it's libraries, the classroom, you know, what have you, that, you know, between, you know, guide or coach or mentor or teacher, is really about creating a relationship that involves care and nurturing and respect. And for me, that really is the cornerstone of what libraries are about, is getting to know people and making them feel that they do matter and that they have, you know, a hand again in constructing for us this larger narrative of library, and that their contribution to what here, at least the Unquiet Library could be, really does matter. So I dwell in spaces as a learning architect or instructional designer, as a gardener that no matter how well it blooms at any given time, there's always, work to be done to nurture and care for that. And to try to be an innovator, someone who really can kind of think outside the box. So I guess my message today, and again, I'm looking forward to opening this up in a minute with those of us that are joining us in the Google Hangout room and through the live stream chat, to reconceptualize the library as a place that is a shared composition, and to really think about whatever age group or group of people we serve, whether it's adult learners, college age students, or little ones, or teens, or somewhere in between. How do we help them to compose and construct this story of library and participation, so that ultimately they're having experiences that give them ownership and responsibility, and again, that sense of agency and what education can be in a lot of different spaces. So I'm going to toggle back and stop sharing my screen, and Howard, I'm going to pass back to you as our host and moderator to open up some discussion.
So respondents, jump on in. Questions for Buffy? Comments on what you just said?
Well, Allison, I noticed something that you've typed into the chat room, and Allison and I have been collaborating virtually for the last few months because we have a shared interest in this topic and PLEs. I noticed that she's indicated this is an exciting time, but it can be frustrating. Up and say, this is the kind of library we'd love to have. What can we do, as students to help, make that happen? Because the student input has been very important, since we've opened in 2006. And while, as Heather said, there are some things that, we are bound by, like you need to have a pass to come in. Again, we want to try to accommodate, everybody that we can. And, some days that is a challenge. We have 4 classes in here, and we're trying to squeeze in lunch visitors or people who have a project emergency. But I think, this is a great opportunity for you all to work with your librarians and through your teacher to give your voice and to have a say in what that library is going to be. So it's a place where you feel like you can participate.
Okay, we have a question on what the future of libraries look like, considering the rapid growth of reading technology such as the Kindle and the iPad that's coming out and everything else like that.
Does anybody else want to jump in on that first?
Go first.
I was at a talk recently from somebody from Stanford University who claimed that libraries are going to be public libraries are going, and school libraries are going to be the key participatory and collaborative creative institutions for the 21st century. So there'll be that technology out there. I kind of punched the air and stood up applauding, but that is quite encouraging. And what Buffy has been saying about trying to make your school library or your public library the place where you go and kind of hang out and share these creative experiences is the way that the profession needs to move. And if we don't, we're doomed, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think reading can be such a social experience that, certainly, everybody does think of books when they think of library. But I think, whether, you're looking for something in digital format or print, people are always wanting advice on, well, what should I read? Or can you make a recommendation? Or not everybody has the ability to buy all of the books that they want on their Kindle or Nook, or they may not even have their own device. And so the library can be a space where if you don't have your own, we can provide that for you. We can give you access to e-content so that you don't have to spend every dollar you have on your own ebooks, or to even show you places where you can get ebooks for free and put them on, your own computer, your smartphone, whatever it might be. But it goes back, I think, to the idea that, the most important part of collection is the human experience. And while certainly, I think that same concern was shared, 15, 20 years ago when we started, having a lot of things move from print to the research databases. People still need help navigating those mediums, or the container, if you will, to access information. And that's really, I think, maybe the fundamental question here, access and knowing how to get into those containers and utilizing those and providing equitable access to all members in a learning community. It's a great question.
We had a teacher here who just recently retired, and he wanted to help change education by starting his own charter school here in our town. But other teachers who were doing that didn't want to really help him out with this kind of shunned him away. What do you think caused that? Why do they do the bare minimum? What is that causes them to do that?
I'll give everybody else a chance before I chime in. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I don't want to be doing all the talking, but I think you ask a really important question, because I think that's one that as teachers, we unfortunately sometimes ask of our colleagues. And I think, whatever area of education you're in, whether it's public school, private, college, wherever, if you don't have a passion and a love and really believe in what you're doing, then unfortunately, I think people do become jaded. And I think in public schools in particular, I think it's teachers' sense of being a professional and their sense of agency has in some places been stripped by this testing culture and mandates coming from on above. I think unfortunately some people, they lose that passion, they lose that spark. And so maybe as a way of, and this sounds maybe a little corny, but as a way of protecting themselves, their hearts, that maybe they start not to care. And I think that's the red flag for me. If I ever got to that point where I didn't care anymore, then it's time for me to go and do something else, because this is the future of our nation. We're talking about people's lives, not just a number or a standardized test score. That you do matter. And perhaps, I can't speak to the exact reasons maybe why those teachers felt threatened by that kind of innovative idea. But, I think it's a very thoughtful question, and maybe a bigger one that's happening now, because there is so much, I think, unhappiness, if you will, about the state of public schools, that people are looking for other solutions. They want other experiences or more flexibility than what, unfortunately, some public schools can offer under some of the current mandates. And I think, there are conversations happening about that now. What are other, alternate learning spaces? But I don't know. What do you other folks think about that?
I think what you said there, Buffy, about happened because the librarian is going, what am I supposed to do? And I think the idea of bringing people in, having agency, and as David says, having learning and realizing, okay, this only hurts because I'm learning. This is only hard or exhausting because it's learning. But I think that there is this, I think, issue for us as professionals about going, how can we spread this out beyond, let's say, the 10% who are innovative, who are forward-looking, who have the energy, who have the passion, and who are driving this stuff on? What are we doing to get that message out to, let's say, 50-60% more of our, should we say, more agnostic professional colleagues, about what role they can inhabit to bring the stuff forward, but maybe not lead the change, maybe not do all of the participatory stuff. But what can they do in support roles in terms of facilitating that and giving the people who want to do the participation, who want to do the engagement, the involvement work directly with young people, that they can concentrate on doing that. Because I think with this, at least certainly in the UK at the moment, the kind of mantra that we keep getting is that we have to do less with more, which means you're not going to have any staff or any time to do anything that you want to do. And again, that can kind of go, okay, well, we're not going to do it, or we're not going to try and do it. But in a way, the only way that you can do less with more is give people the space to actually focus on doing the one thing for a short period of time. And I think particularly about engaging with young people and involving young people in learning, that's something that you can't do if you're on your own in a public library. And that's the kind of situation that we're finding ourselves in, is that our leadership And the young people who come into our libraries really want us to help them with digital inclusion, with using online tools, with editing video, doing all of this stuff. We can't really do that and staff a circulation desk at the same time. And it's about trying to, and I mean, my role as a professional, I think, is to try and politely put that across maybe to leadership who come with really big ideas and vision. It's about going, okay, you know where you want to go. Now we have to sit down and talk about how we get there. And I think that's the major challenge, and that's been really valuable about what you were talking about, some of the articles that you were citing. This is all kind of good ammo for me to kind of go and go, okay, let's slow down and talk about how we're going to get there, because everybody just seems to want to get on the highway and go, okay, we're going in 6 months' time, we're all going to be participating and sharing and collaborating. And it's about, I think we need, well, certainly I need to work with my colleagues about going, okay, let's do it, but how are we going to get there, and what do we want it to look like when we get there? Sorry, that was an extended brain dump, but there you go.
So we're running over a little bit. We're doing an extra 10 minutes today because of the technical difficulties we had getting Buffy on. This has really been great, and I would love to just spend a couple of more minutes, because we have this special opportunity to have Dr. Preston's class, and give Dr. Preston's class the opportunity to ask their own questions or to reflect on or respond to what they've heard so far.
Okay, pretty much what I've just heard with what I've heard right now, it seems like with this information, with this upcoming technology, with this stuff that's going on, it seems like everybody wants to get to point B, but no one wants to take the time to travel from point A per se. And I think, like, just kind of a reflection on the school spirit, I think this can actually be reflected to the larger scheme as far as this. The reason why this thing is going to take off the way it is, because truly the more you put it into it, the more you're going to get out. And I think that people just approached this new technology learning in general with, I'm going to give for the sake of giving, and for the sake of continuing to get the ball rolling, because it's proven time and time again that those who give, those who become skilled and are passionate about what they do. Take Steve Jobs. He got kicked out of Apple, yet his company got brought back into Apple because he just kept, because he was doing what he was left to do. And I think that people are just so focused on the mind, give me, that's why our goals, that's why everything is kind of becoming so essential, because no one's willing to put themselves out there for the sake of themselves and the benefit of others. And I'm pretty sure that's what I've kind of come up with from what I've heard collectively. And I'm pretty, that's my 17-year-old solution to actually keep this thing moving and going strong. Again, this is me, 17-year-old. So
this is Hamilton. How long did it take you to get to point B? Because you seem to be there already, and we want to get there with you, to be able to have that library where we could go. Because you have people walking back and forth behind you, and they seem to be getting stuff done.